afternoon.
Here, here.
Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hey, hey.
My name is Jane Ambick, and since it's 12 and I want to start our relationship with each other by respecting our time. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for joining us. And if Jim Barnett calls in, will he be able to? So are we on? Or?
I hear you, Jane.
Jim Barnett,
Hey.
disembodied voice from. Are you in Seattle or where?
I'm in Seaside, Oregon with my mother.
Spectacular. Well, welcome to the first meeting of the Municipal Task Force on Public Hearings, and I'm glad you could call in. I was asked to help the Assembly and the organization of this effort, and so I have an informal role in gathering us together today. We've had a lot of assistance from the Municipal Clerk's Office, who have prepared a little booklet for us that includes the pieces of paper that govern our thinking about the public hearing process, and we'll go through those in a minute. But I wanted to just start our meeting today by taking a look at this really complicated agenda, which is says it's over there on the far wall, that says we introduce ourselves to each other. We elect a chair, we try and review our materials, and set up a calendar for the day. And so with that, I'm going to start with asking for introductions of people, because lots of people don't know each other. And I'm going to start with our Assembly members, who are not official members of the task force, but are in fact our advisors. And so I'm going to ask the Assembly members, of which these three were appointed to serve as the Assembly Rules Committee, and they are the advisors to us. And I'll ask Elvie to introduce herself. And what I'm asking is a little introduction about where you come from and how long you've been serving and why you're interested in this issue.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elvie Gray-Jackson. I'm really grateful that you're all here. And just so you understand why we're not sitting there, is because we're not part of the committee. This is your committee. We're part of the Rules Committee. So that's why we're out here. Not that we're shy. But I've been a municipal employee for 30 years. May 2nd hit 30 years as a municipal employee. And I've worked for the Assembly for 18 of those years, 42 different members. And I got elected to the Assembly in 2008, and I ran again and got elected in 2011, and I'm running again next year, and I'm hopeful that my constituency will think I'm doing a good job and re-elect me. I think that the public process is very, very, very important. And the charter is real clear on the people's right to be heard. And that is near and dear to my heart. I don't care how long a public hearing takes. Anybody who wants to be heard by the Assembly has that right. And so I'm really pleased that this committee is established, and that the ordinance that was put before us is no longer on the table, but you are being tasked with a pretty big task. But I know you'll do a fine job, and I know that you'll present something to us that that everybody can agree on, and then we'll move on from there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Elvie. Jennifer Johnson.
I'm Jennifer Johnson. I'm on the Assembly. First of all, Chair Hall asked me to convey his great appreciation and the Assembly's appreciation for doing this. We all know that it's one of those tasks that sometimes on the face looks very simple, but there's all sorts of nuances, and we know that we've asked you to roll a rock up, a huge rock uphill, and we really appreciate your service. So I want to first of all say that. The interesting thing about this is that I'm also president of the Alaska Municipal League this year, and have been discussing the same kind of issue on a statewide basis, and trying to figure out how to frame it. How does the mayor of Noatak have the same weight, or how do they become part of a public hearing process as the mayor of Anchorage or Fairbanks, and the accessibility. And out of that, I've come to.
We can't hear you.
Sorry, Jim. Did you really want to hear me?
Yeah.
Anyways, on the statewide system, what I've come to appreciate or starting to reframe the whole approach I was taking for the municipal league on how do we make public hearings inclusive and still get the work of the legislature or whatever body done, which is, it's a big question. And I've changed on the state with the AML, I've changed it to a question is, how do we make sure that everybody gets on the public record? And what does that public record look like? And I think we're in a very great time because, you know, technology is changing, but we're also, here in the clerk's office, going to be going out for a new RFP for our system, our assembly system. So if you come up with ways that the system can be more interactive with the public, or in a way so members of the community are part of the public record, I think that's, you know, a very important question. As I say, that's what how I'm focusing my attention on the state. Again, appreciate your time and effort. Sorry about the dark glasses. It's a beautiful sunny day out there. Sorry that you're inside on a beautiful sunny day, but we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dick Trainee.
I thought I'd move up so I could see all of you. Dick Trainee, I've been in the assembly for 14 years, and on my way to 20. But I enjoy what we do. I've been chairman 6 years, the years I've been on the assembly. The process works well. The charter you wrote for us that was adopted by the citizens is explicit. It says everybody has the ability to testify in front of the assembly. In 14 years, AO 37 was the first time I ever saw the public turn away from testifying. So what I hope you guys can do is take a look at what happened and make sure that never happens again. Because when I was out there, when I saw 200 people that wanted to testify being turned away, our system is not working. So we just need your help to reemphasize the fact that according to the charter, everybody has a right to be heard. And that wasn't done. I said in 14 years, I've never seen that happen before. I want to make sure it never happens again. And thanks for what you guys have chosen to do, because it's a heck of a task, but we really appreciate it. Let us know how we can help you.
Thank you so much.
And Jim, good to see you again. Or hear you.
Thank you.
Now we're just going to do self-introductions, and I want to remind people that he needs to be able to hear you, so use your outside voice inside so he can hear you as well. I'll just start and say my name is Jane Anvik, and I had the privilege as a young woman to serve on the Charter Commission that helped unify the city and the borough of Anchorage in 1975 and 1976. I learned everything I know from Arla Sturgeluski. I also had the privilege of serving on the Assembly for 6 years, and also had the opportunity to serve as the chair. And when I served on the Assembly, we were doing controversial issues like zoning the hillside, bringing Eagle River Screaming and Fighting into the municipality, zoning Eagle River, and actually trying to create a new government out of what were two disparate governments before that. I believe in the public process, and am happy to serve on trying to make sure that the process for public hearings is consistent no matter what the topic is, no matter how many people are in the room, so everybody from the Assembly to the public knows what to expect. So with that, we're going to go this way. So Penny.
Penny Goodstein, I represent the Interfaith Council of Anchorage. I'm here because I was invited to, and I'm happy that the Interfaith Council's involved.
Thank you very much.
Naturally, I just took another bite of food. I'm Arla Sturgeluski, and I did,
Jim has to be able to hear you.
well, Jim,
Hi here.
how you doing? Good. I have served on the Charter Commission. That was a wonderful exercise. Many of us had watched the two governments and the fact of the numerous suits between the two bodies, and it was wonderful to see peace more or less on the horizon. And just as a kind of a side note, I'd served many years on the Planning Commission, and honestly, we used to have meetings until 3, say it was 4 o'clock in the morning, going all night long. And so there's been a lot of discipline and change. And it was interesting to me that at least one thing that we did is apparently not totally clear and needs some more discussion. So I'm happy to be here to be part of the public process. I think that our government on the whole works well, but it needs the public process to make that happen.
In case anybody doesn't know, Arliss also served in the Alaska State Senate for 10 years. And
14, dear.
14 years. 14 years. And, also served on the Anchorage Municipal Assembly and has led with distinction on a variety of issues in the state, and we are grateful for her participation. Cheryl.
I'm Cheryl Richardson, and I'm here, I believe, representing the Anchorage Citizens Coalition. Public participation is an important part of that work, and we promote it at every chance. I understand that we're here to talk about the public hearing process and how to protect the citizens' rights through that effort. I'd also at some time like to, maybe not during this process, but perhaps a later process, or in this if we can, talk about public participation in local government and how the public hearing process is a piece of that. But I think many times we lose the big picture on all of the public participation in this community and how the public hearing is a piece of it, not the pinnacle. It's just one element. Right now it's the most important element, but again, I'd like to broaden the conversation later on if we can.
Thank you, Cheryl. Tim.
I'm Tim Potter. I'm one of the owners of Dowell HKM. In 1981, I came on an adventure to Alaska that was going to last for 2 to 3 years. I was planning director of Gig Harbor, Washington, and I came up for 2 or 3 years, and 32 years later, I'm still here. And looking around the room, I'm going to boldly say that I don't think there's anyone in the room that's been to more public meetings of sorts than I have, especially the municipal assembly. So I've been going to municipal assembly meetings, almost every one, for 32 years. And like Dick, I can say that the first time I've seen the system fail in some fashion or another was on AO 37. And I was actually watching on TV that night. I had attended a couple of the meetings, watching on TV that night, and was very surprised in the actions that were taken. Jane knows that for a period of time that one of my projects held the record of 3.5 nights of testimony. That was the Native Heritage Center and the controversy associated with it at the Assembly. So I've been through it all, and hopefully I can help respond to some of the nuance issues that Jennifer brought up, because there are nuances to the whole thing. So my hope is that whatever comes out of this is balanced so that things can move forward but have appropriate and fair public input, as every citizen should have. So that's my goal.
Thank you, Tim. Amanda.
I'm Amanda Moser. I am from the Municipal Clerk's Office. I'm the Deputy Municipal Clerk in charge of elections. This is my 4th year in the Clerk's Office, and since becoming Deputy Municipal Clerk, I have been running the meetings, which has allowed me to see the process from a different side, actually being behind the dais as folks are coming up to testify. And I recognize that the public process is important, and I'm thankful to be part of this conversation.
Jim Barnett is on the phone. Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you for letting me participate by telephone. I apologize that I'm not there in person. It's wonderful to be asked to participate with all of you fine people. I, of course, know most of you, and look forward to seeing you in person at the next meeting. I served on the Assembly from 86 to 93, but I've also been involved on the planning board and state government, and so I have, I guess, a fair understanding of how we do things in Alaska, and I look forward to participating in this. Maybe we can find some alternatives for people to participate in the process and yet not appear to be truncating the public hearing process. That's certainly my objective as we proceed. But thank you all for letting me participate.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Carolyn Ramsey, a recent grad from Alaska Pacific University, Environmental Policy and Planning, and I've been a resident of Anchorage for almost 40 years now. I grew up with these two women being household names, which was wonderful, and I have never, in all of my years, seen what happened on 37. I've testified multiple times. I've been involved in politics. I grew up with a mother who drugged me to the voting booth every time and learned very early on. So after seeing what happened on 37 and our voices being shut down and watching what's happening, honestly, in the rest of the United States in many places where people's voices are being shut down, it's wrong, it's not okay, and it goes against everything that has been written into our charter and everything I've known in this city and this town, and it's not something that I ever want to see happen. The public process is very important, and people having the ability to speak their mind and have their voices heard is extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you. Joelle.
I'm Joelle Hall. I'm with the AFL-CIO. So needless to say, I was knee-deep in AO 37 from the other side, from the inside of that experience, working to organize and to channel in a productive way the hundreds and hundreds of people who wanted to have their voice heard, working as well as we could with Assembly leadership and Assembly staff to facilitate this in the most organized way possible, being as proactive as humanly possible to organize that many. We knew there were going to be hundreds and hundreds of people. I have an interesting vantage point from having been on the inside and having watched the organization and what we were able to manage, and yet still the end result being what it was. Before coming to the AFL-CIO, I have done consulting work and political work as long as I've been in Alaska, and I used to have a business card for my consulting business that my title was bringing people to the public process. I really believe in that. It's what I did in my work before I came to the AFL-CIO. It is, we have governments here that are accessible and that listen. Maybe not on every issue on every time, but generally speaking, that's what we have in Alaska, and we need to do everything we can to maintain it because we have great systems and we have the ability to influence our government. That's what they're there for.
Thank you. Andy.
My name is Andy Holloman. I'm currently serving as president of the Anchorage Education Association. We had a lot of members that were very concerned about AO 37, and that's what brought us out. Similar to Jim, I'm just here for the summer as a tourist. That was in '86, and can't seem to get myself back on the road to get home again. But one of the things that is a draw is the fact that, unlike a lot of places in the East Coast, the idea that citizens will go stand up and speak to their assembly members and have an impact, that's not universal in the country anymore, and we still have that. And you see it at times when masses of people turn out. You see it at times when a handful of people turn out, that the people that are making the decisions or have the votes do change their minds. And I think it's what makes the process so important. And it's part of the reason that we do need to put some certainty in this from the citizen angle. I think one of the biggest things that made me feel like things weren't going to go well with AO 37 is people could not tell in advance what was going to happen. You know, a week in advance, people would go, what do I need to do if I want to speak? And you say, well, I'm not sure, we're not sure which night, we're not sure which time. And then it got to be 4 nights before, and you still don't know, and it got to be the day of, and you're still not sure what to tell people. You're still not sure if they're going to miss their chance, if they're not there on a particular day, or if they need to plan for a different day. And that was sort of the, when that happens, a lot of the public gets mad. And anger really isn't fruitful. It doesn't contribute to a solution. It doesn't contribute to us all coming back together and going forward in whatever way we pick. And I see this as a way that when people know they were heard and they know they got to exercise their right, there's a much greater chance for unity in the aftermath, because you do only get to make one vote on one solution, and it's not going to be what everybody wants. So I'm happy to be here and feel honored to be here, and I hope we work out something that people like.
Good. Thank you, Bob.
My name's Bob Churchill. I have, like everybody else, an extensive background in public process. Sat on the South Central Subsistence Council for years, the Fish and Game Advisory Committee for years, the Board of Game, so used to controversy, currently on the Federation of Community Councils, as well as my own council. I also sit on the Equal Rights Commission, number of other boards, but a lot of them at their heart have public testimony, and nobody believes in it more than I. When we had the Fish and Game Advisory Committee, we always came out brilliant because we got the right people to tell us how to be brilliant. We had wonderful testimony. And that's the thing I love about Alaskans. We have, I think, brilliant people that come forward and speak honestly from their heart. We even have Arla Sturgeluski come to our community council meetings and help us along. So it's, I just think it's a wonderful place, and I would hate to see that capacity diminish. So I'm terribly excited to be here, recognizing this is sort of like juggling hand grenades. So no, and Jane, thank you so much for organizing and getting this together.
Bob is also on the board of the Federation of Community Councils, and we had asked the Federation to send us a delegate because so many of the public hearings include testimony from the community council. So we're grateful for your participation. In the spirit of public participation, I would like to have the people in the audience introduce themselves, and I'll start with Assemblymember Tim Steele.
Tim Steele, fairly newly elected Assembly member from West Anchorage, running again. But we have a wonderful process here in Alaska, and wonderful people in Alaska. Every once in a while, there's a blip in the system that needs to be addressed, and it's fantastic that we have people of the caliber of this group to step up and help make some policy adjustments. And thank you all for agreeing to participate and agreeing to help. I'm not on the Rules Committee, but I'm certainly an interested party, and I appreciate it.
Jean, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Jean, you're going to have to.
Can't hear you.
Eugene Haberman, since April 4th, 2012, or 2013 now, I've been doing an investigation of Anchorage officials investigating election of April 3rd, 2012. I carried it over to investigate the process, the public process, from the boards and commission meetings, regularly almost every meeting, Public Safety Commission, also attend the Budget Advisory Commission, and many of the other meetings. And this is another example of me present and investigating. I should note that I released a series of reports regarding my investigation. Unfortunately, there's been since day one, a news blackout of my reports. And I'd like two questions to ask you, my permission to this body regarding this meeting as you're present. Might be permitted.
What's your question?
Number one is who appointed you? Who appointed you?
Good question.
Okay. And also, when were you appointed? And did you know about this meeting? Did you get a copy of the agenda? And when did you get a copy of the agenda? And these are the group of questions that deals with public process. I'm not aware of any public announcement to who was appointed to this body until I saw right there. To give you an example, I'm not aware of any agenda out there regarding what was going to be on the agenda for this meeting. I am aware there was a public announcement on the website for announcing that this a group of this sort would be meeting. But clearly from the start of this meeting, I could see that you were in violation of the OMA, which is the Open Meetings Act. Just to start out with. Surprised, but not really surprised, because over my investigation going on for more than 14, since April 4, 2012, this has been repetitive, and this has been frustrating, particularly when I can't get my information out. So in response to my questions, I appreciate a response from you.
We'll get there. Let's just introduce the other people that are in the audience first.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a student here. Well, I'm just viewing the class.
Welcome, Emily.
A student where?
I go to Polaris in both. I'm taking an online class for government.
Government 101 from Polaris High School student. Welcome.
Yeah, my name's Nick Moe. Some people recognize me as the write-in candidate in West Anchorage in April, and I feel so strongly about this issue that I decided to launch the 2-week write-in campaign because of it. But before that, I really spent my career encouraging political involvement, specifically with young adults. And I want to see whatever happens with the public process be more inclusive, work for more young people to get involved, and to, we had a great system before, but we can always build on that and keep moving forward. So, I just want to, remind everybody here that, there's a lot of young people who want to get involved in processes like this, but simply don't know how or don't feel listened to. And when we have what happened with AO 37, that creates even more of a barrier when they feel, when I feel people aren't being listened to. So thank you for meeting and talking about this important subject. And I'm just on my lunch break to learn about what the conversation is going to be and learn from all the experts at the table.
Barbara Huff, Technis, I'm with the Teamsters. We also are very concerned about the public process, engaging our members and everybody else in the community, not only here in Anchorage, but around the state. Population size of Anchorage, unfortunately, sometimes what is implemented or accepted practice in Anchorage tends to flood around the state. So I applaud you, each and every one of you, for participating in this process and hopefully assuring that what happened with the AO 37 doesn't happen again in the future.
Terrific. Jim, we're going to get back to your questions in a second. This is the very first meeting of the very first collection of this group who haven't even met each other before, so I don't know how we can be violating anything because we're just saying hello to each other for the first time. But I do want to know that that on June 4th, the Assembly adopted the resolution that said that we should create the task force. On June 18th, the Assembly created the Assembly Rules Committee, which is responsible for being our assistants, and the names of, they went back to the resolution and said, these are the kinds of groups that should be represented, and asked people if they were willing to serve. So that's my understanding of how we got here, and that the clerk's office had put a notice out that said that this was the first meeting that was going to happen. That's what I know. And the agenda, we talked about on the phone an hour ago to make sure that I had sent out a memo to the people as I understood it of what we were trying to do. And the agenda was proposed for our consideration when we meet. So it wasn't created ahead of time other than to say, what do you think about this? And with that, I'm going to say the meeting is open, and our next order.
Who appointed you?
Our names were suggested by the
Assembly did.
Anchorage Assembly members. These three, the task, they are.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Please, go for
first
it.
off, there is no rule or regulation that says that any of these folks volunteering their time have to be appointed. Chair is in a leadership role on behalf of the Assembly, and he made a phone call to Ms. Amick and asked her if she would chair the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
But I'm not the chair of the committee because the committee has to make
Right,
that happen.
acting. We'll just call her
Good
acting.
job, you're doing fine.
Yeah, just keep moving.
All right, okay, so what I want to say is that names were suggested from these Assembly members. People were called, were you willing to serve? And this is the first gathering of the people who said yes, they were willing to serve to represent the broad range of people that were identified in the resolution that it created. With that, what I want to do is move to the election of a chair. And I want to say that the floor is open for nominations of anyone who would like to serve.
I would like to nominate you as chair.
I'll second.
Second.
Well, come on.
That's 10 seconds. Does that make it 20? I don't know.
Call question.
I move that the nominations be closed and unanimous
Second.
ballot be.
Is there any discussion on this proposal?
We just had it.
No, I'm very serious. Is there any discussion on this proposal? Hearing and seeing no one, the request was for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the nomination? Hearing and seeing none. Ta-da! Great, all right.
Thank you all, go forth and prosper.
Thank you very much. So that was the full public process associated with a chair. And I'm willing to help us create a structure that is as open and as public as we want our public process to be. And to that end, we have Amanda is a member of the task force, but is also taking notes. And our meeting is being recorded so that our words of wisdom will be on the record. And we will also have what they call action minutes, which reflect any actual formal actions that are taken by us. It was moved by, seconded by, the vote was, so that there are action minutes of our meetings as well as a tape recording of our conversation. And Jim, the question to you was, was there any objection? And I didn't hear any, but I didn't want you to think that you didn't get to play because you're on the phone.
Oh, no. Actually, I thought I seconded the motion.
Okay, all right.
A lot of us did.
There was a lot of that going on. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled, Jane, that you're willing to take on that responsibility, and hope that you will. I know you do an excellent job. I think it's really completely appropriate that you and Arliss are involved because of your role with the charter, and that's essential for the public to know that people who thought of these commitments in the first place are leading us.
Thank you. Okay, Amanda.
And just through the chair, we will post the meetings on the municipal website shortly after the meeting, so they will be available to the public to listen to.
Terrific. So the minutes will be posted on the website.
And the actual recordings of the meetings too.
Thank you very much. With that, we have before us a proposed agenda. Is there any objection to the adoption of this agenda for today's meeting? Hearing and seeing no objection, this is the agenda, this massive 4 points, our agenda. And we are now on item number 3. By the way, these materials are available on this table, and you're welcome to come and pick them up. And there is food in the back room, and you're welcome to have something to eat as well. We're on item number 3, which is a review of the agenda, or excuse me, the review of the materials. Each of you were able to have a packet, and in the little first packet of the agenda of this spiral notebook are 3 documents. They are the resolution 2013-146, which created the task force, which was established by the Municipal Assembly on June 4th. And this lays out what the tasks were that are anticipated, what our task is as anticipated by the Anchorage Municipal Assembly. So it's resolution number 146. On June 18th, the Assembly chair appointed 3 members of the Assembly to serve as the Assembly Rules Committee. They are they are the people who we are available to us to ask questions to seek counsel, and to provide us with a connection to the Assembly. This task force will make a recommendation to those 3 Assembly members. I expect that we would have a work session with them, and in having a conversation when we're done about what we actually want to recommend to them, have a discussion with them, and then go forward to the full Assembly. So it's Assembly Memorandum 349 was adopted on June 18th by the Assembly and created the Assembly Task Force, the Assembly Rules Committee, who are identified in this resolution.
Madam Chair, am I correct that the only charge to the Rules Committee is the relationship they have with this committee? It's not been a standing committee?
It will become a standing committee. or
With other assigned?
With other assignments, yes.
All right, thank you.
Any organization, for example, the states, you guys have a rules committee on the state level. We need a rules committee on the assembly level too.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
On the state level, the state legislature has a rules committee. We need to have one on the assembly too. So this is one of the first jobs assigned to the rules committee, is this process.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Then the third item in your agenda is Article 2 of the Bill of Rights of the Anchorage Municipal Charter. And the 10th Bill of Rights, 10th right as articulated in the Bill of Rights, is the one related to the public hearing. And it reads, among the rights guaranteed by this charter, the people of Anchorage are guaranteed the right to be heard at public hearings prior to the adoption of a proposed 6-year plan of the school system and the municipality, or the approval of the annual budget or any ordinance except an emergency ordinance as defined herein. That is the right that was guaranteed by the citizens of Anchorage in their first, when we created the municipality. So those are the 3 documents you have that are sort of the foundation of what we're about, what our job is, and what our task is. In conversations with the assembly members, I want to now move to are there any questions about any of those materials that you have before you? When I was talking with the assembly members about the task force, one of their objectives was that we might accomplish our work by the end of September, and that's so if there are budgetary implications to anything that we recommend, that they have the ability to consider that as they start their budget process. So the goal here on July 11th is that we will have finished our work by September 30th and would have done a report to the Assembly so that they are aware of what our recommendations are regarding the public hearing process. So it'll be short and intense is our objective. Are there any questions about that? One of the things I had asked is that we might be able to actually have people's calendars and your calendar requirements available so we could take a look at what our opportunities are for getting together to achieve our objectives. I wanted to mention, maybe I'm just going to repeat, which is that in my memo of July 9th to you, it sets out what the resolution of the Assembly said our job was. And in Section 1 of the Assembly Resolution says, quote, the participation of a citizens task force is invited to advise and assist the Assembly in its development of procedures governing the Assembly's conduct of public hearings open to testimony from members of the public. That's our job. And number 2, the task is to come to, and Section 4 of the Assembly Resolution says, the task is to come to consensus on recommendations to advise and assist the Assembly in the development of procedures governing the Assembly's conduct of public hearings open to testimony among members of the public. The Citizens Task Force recommendations will be presented to the Assembly Rules Committee prior to the presentation of the Assembly. So we'll talk to those 3 guys. And then the Assembly Rules Committee may also advise the Assembly with recommendations. The members of the Assembly Rules Committee are not members of the Citizens Task Force. So we make our recommendations to them, and after that conversation, then we make our recommendations to the Assembly. That's the game plan.
Just sort of a point, I would assume any contact from press or anyone should go through you. Are we agreed on that?
Well, what's the discussion? What would people like to do about contact from the press?
I think that's appropriate.
I agree.
Okay. I'd be happy to be the press contact, and also I'm happy to do that. Oh, visual aids! Yay! Sorry. Terrific. So, Jim, we just got a big calendar that shows all 3 months in one visual aid. it's my recommendation that as we think about this, we try to come together to review materials, look at materials, and then we use our time together to discuss the materials that would have been handed out. And so my objective is that when we meet, we are having a concentrated conversation about a particular topic or a concentrated discussion about a recommendation, so that our time together is really for deliberation or for receipt of information, but that we are using our time to the highest advantage, and that because all of our lives are busy, that we try to accomplish that inside of an hour or an hour and a half when we meet, because our lives are so busy. My goal for today is that we would be completed by 1:30 or earlier. So, but one of my objectives for right now is to propose a meeting schedule for this task force. And by the way, I'm blown away that you're all here. That it's pretty exciting.
Good.
So what I want to suggest for your consideration is what might be possible dates for us to converge. I have no idea if Thursday at noon is a good time for you, except that you're all here. And I don't know what you had to do to move heaven and earth to accomplish that, but if Thursday at noon is a good day for you, it might be a good day for us to be looking at.
Works for me.
Okay, all right. So today is July 11th, and what I would suggest is that we convene again on Thursday, July 25th at noon. And I don't know if anybody's going to be out of town, that's just a proposal for your consideration. It works. Okay. My next proposal is that we look at a meeting in August, and unfortunately, I'm out of town for a couple of weeks, and I don't get back until the 15th, late that day. So how do people feel about meeting either on Friday the 16th or the following week, which is Thursday, August 22nd at noon?
Either works.
Neither is fine with me, Jane.
My feedback is there's often assembly work sessions on Friday, and it might interfere with that.
Okay.
16th doesn't work.
Does not? Okay. And how about Thursday, August 22nd? Okay, Thursday, August 22nd. And then it's my intention that we hold a public hearing, that by the time we have met in August, I'm hoping we've come down to some recommendations that we'd like to pursue, and that I believe we should have a public hearing at the Assembly chambers, which is where people are accustomed to talking about the government, and that we actually have a formal Assembly meeting public hearing at the Assembly meeting.
In the evening.
In the evening. And so I checked with the clerk's office about when the Assembly meets and what's possible, and there are two options for our consideration. One is Tuesday, August 26th, which is the weekend, well, anyway, Tuesday, August 26th, which is still in August. Tuesday, August 27th, or Tuesday, September 3rd, which is the day after Labor Day. My intention is that we would have a public hearing that would start at 6 o'clock and go for as long as it would be required to hear all the people who would like to talk to us. And it might be quick or it might be long, I have no idea. I have a view that August is still summertime in people's minds, and that they don't do government until after Labor Day. But it's a notion predicated on this idea that it's tough to get people engaged in the community in the summertime. So
if it's any consolation, school goes back in session August 20th or 21st.
I actually, thank you, I knew that. And
if that helps. some people, that's where summer ends.
But like the state fair is still going on, so we've got this, and if the sun is shining and the state fair is going on, they're not coming to
And the
Dr.
silvers are running, all
Right.
those important things we do as a last.
How about the 3rd?
So I think that Tuesday, September 3rd might be a possibility if we want to do that.
And time?
Yes.
Madam Chair, are you going to identify potential additional dates for continuation of that public hearing?
Oh, thank you. Sure, I think that's a great idea.
Because having that room available will be important.
That's a very good idea.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
This is Jim. I hate to load us up with public hearings, but I'd actually recommend that there be 2 public hearings. One at the beginning of the process, so we can be seen to be listening to ideas.
okay.
And second, at the end of the process, when we're about to issue our final report.
Thank you. What do other people think about that?
And so, the 27th is a better day for me than the Labor Day week, but I would also recommend that we do one at the end of September when we're fixing to issue our report, if that's in fact when we're doing it.
Oh, so you're not saying the beginning is now in July, you're saying the beginning is, I see.
After we've had a couple of meetings and kind of have lined out what we're all about, we should clue in the public and give the public the opportunity to weigh in. And then when we've got a final report that we're happy with, that we give the public another opportunity. That's all my suggestion is.
What do you guys think? Okay? Sounds reasonable. Well,
Madam Chair, before you finish up this discussion on that item, one of the constant concerns and how other jurisdictions do public hearings. Some of them do them during the day, some of them start in the late afternoon and go into the evening, so that people that are available during the day but not at night actually have the opportunity to come. So we may want to consider some type of structure like that so we don't get that criticism.
okay, and, yes, my notion is, more people are available in the evening than during the day for a public hearing. That's my view of that, because many people are very working during the day. A lot of people work at night too, but yes, certainly. Let's go back to, if we were to have 2 public hearings, then maybe what we would be doing is, I heard you, Jim, say that you're better off in August than in September, but I think we might have better turnout on September 3rd than we would on August 26th. So maybe what we could do is hold the public hearing on Tuesday the 3rd, and then if, in Mr. Potter's view, we actually end up with so many people that we have to carry it over, we plan on doing that on Wednesday the 4th, so it happens the very next day. But then my proposal is that we try again to have a public hearing on, the Assembly has its chamber on the 24th, so my belief is that we should do it two weeks later, which is Tuesday, September 17th. We do it on the 3rd and on the 17th, with the intention that we would make our recommendation to the Assembly so that when they meet on September 24th, they are considering our recommendations, which is their last meeting in September.
Madam Chair, as I said earlier, the Assembly Chambers is scheduled, and I believe that the 4th will probably be the first plating board public hearing of the month, and so the chambers would be booked for them. So arrangements would either have to be made now to have them meet somewhere else, or we need to go to a different location identified in advance before that.
You didn't say the 4th, though, you said the 3rd.
Tuesday the 3rd, and then Tim said if we ran over,
Oh, I see.
where would we go next? And I understand. And if we need to, then we'll have the clerk's office figure out a place for us to do for overrun if we end up with that. Okay, so we're...
Madam Chair, if we go with the 3rd, can I suggest that we have our second public hearing on the 1st of October? That way we'll have a report presumably to the Assembly right after that. We could meet on Thursday the 3rd to act on it.
The Assembly has requested that we actually complete our work in the month of September, so when they start on the budget, they have our report. So they meet on the September 10th and September 24th. So our goal is to give them our report on September 24th. And so the 2 dates that are available for public hearings in September that do not conflict with the Assembly using the Assembly chambers are the 3rd and the 17th.
My only concern is those are pretty quick, one on top of the other, and it doesn't give us much time to deliberate and develop a final report. If the theory is that the first hearing is to hear people's thoughts and the second hearing is for them to review our report.
Comment from Elvie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is just my 2 cents, if you will. There is no reason, I mean, we get the budget October 1st, and there is no reason why we have to have any results from this committee while we're going through the budget process. We don't approve it until November, and Mr. Train and I were just talking, we don't see any financial impact coming from this committee. So it's really, I mean, regardless of what may have been said, it's not, it really isn't an issue.
Okay. Therefore, we could have the second public hearing on Tuesday, October 1st, with our recommendations to the Assembly the following week. Cheryl?
You know, I'm comfortable with all of the discussion to date. I just we should go on record that for those of us who attended the Assembly hearings on 63, was that the number?
64.
64. There's a lot of public discussion, and most of the ideas I expect are on the table. And I think now we're cleaning up, and I'm perfectly comfortable going back and asking the public again what their thoughts are. I think that's appropriate. But there's a lot of on the record language and goals and standards that we can look to as we work up to that time.
Thank you, and I think it's really important that actually there's a lot of material for us to consider. There's public testimony that people offered during the month of April and May when there was a discussion about the process of public hearing. Additionally, the clerk's office has, Amanda has been going through all the other local governments in Alaska and has pulled the information from Fairbanks, Juneau, Haines, other boroughs. Tell me which all that she can share with us.
Thank you, through the chair. Fairbanks, Wasilla, Kenai, City Borough of Juneau, Kodiak Island Borough, and Skagway. And I have been in conversation with clerks from all the boroughs across Alaska. I'm still waiting for additional resources, but I've sent an email to all the clerks through the Alaska Association of Municipal Clerks asking them how their cities, boroughs, municipalities handle public testimonies. And so I've gotten a ton of great information. More is coming in, so I will share this with everyone for your review, and then as I get additional stuff, I will keep sharing that information, just as part of the conversation.
So Jim, she's got hard copies of materials from those municipalities and can also convey them electronically so we can all read those materials from other places. So let's go back to the schedule for a second and say that we'll do our public hearing on Tuesday, September 3rd, and we'll do our second public hearing on Tuesday, October 1st, with the goal that we will provide our report to the Assembly for their consideration on October 10th. Okay?
Could we have a time and location so we can just have it completed?
My understanding is that we can have the Assembly chambers for our public hearings. I talked to Barbara about this on those Tuesdays when the Assembly are not in it, and that if anybody's in it, they can bump them. So that's what I'm operating on, which is that our public hearings can be set for 6 o'clock on Tuesday, September 3rd, and for 6 o'clock on Tuesday, October 1st at the Assembly chambers in the library. The meetings at noon will be in this room, and they are going to be on July 25th and August 22nd. Right? Did I get that right? And you will also be receiving materials to review from us, from those other communities. Dick?
Jane, when you guys meet with our rules committee, we can meet here. Just tell us what day, and we'll have the parking slots bagged out there, so you won't have to worry about not finding parking.
Terrific.
You can have them bagged.
My objective would be that we would be meeting with you, the Rules Committee, on Thursday, October 3rd at noon here.
It's fine, we'll just get them bagged. So when you come in and it says Assembly member, just park there, because we'll bag them out, and we don't have to worry about it. Because parking's always a concern down here.
I've never been bagged.
Is that on the record, ma'am?
On the record.
Oh, good. There's new beginnings for people who are 85. I like that. A first.
Almost 86.
Oh, 86. So our meeting schedule is Thursday, July 25th in this room. Thursday, August 22nd in this room at noon. And Thursday, October 3rd in this room at noon. The public hearings are going to be on Tuesday, September 3rd at 6 o'clock in the Assembly chambers, and Tuesday, October 1st at 6 o'clock in the Assembly chambers.
Are we going to have any work sessions in September for this group?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes. So I think that we just got longer in my view of the world. So how about Thursday, September, here are the choices. We have September 12th or 19th. Does anybody have a preference one way or the other? 12th?
Yes. That sounds good.
Okay, so then we'll also meet on Thursday, the 12th of September.
At noon?
At noon in this room.
Is that a work session or a regular meeting?
It's a regular meeting of us.
Okay.
So we can be ready to do both a public hearing and talk with our task force. So just by way of review, we will meet on Thursday, July 25th. We will meet on Thursday, August 22nd, and we will meet on Thursday, September 12th, and we will meet on Thursday, October 3rd, excuse me, Thursday, October 3rd at noon in this room. We will have public hearings at the Assembly Hall on Tuesday, September 3rd at 6 o'clock, and Tuesday, October 1st at 6 o'clock. Our intention is that we will report our findings to the Assembly on Tuesday, October 8th.
Say that again?
We will make our report to the Assembly on Tuesday, October 8th at the Assembly meeting.
And a quick question. The meeting on October 3rd, just to clarify, that's with the Assembly Rules Committee?
Yes. And if it turns out that after the first public hearing, we would like to visit with you again, we may ask you to come and join us on the
At your pleasure.
September 12th meeting when we are talking about what we learned from the public.
I may be in New Jersey, but I'll have to check my calendar.
Okay.
She can be disembodied on the phone, it'll work out all right.
My mom will be 90, so I need to be in New Jersey.
You bet.
But anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Madam
Right.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would ask that shortly after this meeting, we ask the clerk's office to send us a copy of the deeds.
We will. The clerk's office is going to take really good care of
Yes.
us. And they will send us a calendar of what we have agreed to do, as well as, but the clerk's office needs to have a good email address and your preferred telephone number for each of you. And Amanda would happily collect that from you today before you leave. Okay. Are there any questions about our calendar?
No, efficiently done.
We have some time to actually talk about content. If people have burning issues associated with process questions. And what I'm just saying, if you came into the room with 3 things on your head about what you wanted to make sure we understood about your point of view, this would be a great time to just articulate that. Anybody?
Want to?
Go for it.
First of all, I think every citizen in the city has the right to address the assembly on any ordinance, and I absolutely believe that. But I also believe that there needs to be within this process some fair, reasonable assumption of how long we're going to manage that open process, so that if it becomes a game in which one side or the other just continues to pour people in by making phone calls week after week after week after week, and there's no line that says, here's the open process, and at this point, we're gonna say, you need to show up and sign up on the list, or you have to email in on the list, or whatever, and we're gonna go through the end of the list that's been signed up, and we're gonna give 3 times. If you're not there, you'll get moved to the back of the list every time. After 3 times, if you're not there, you're done. And you don't get your chance, or you miss your chance. Just to prevent a situation where it goes on and on and on, because government still has to be able to get its work done. And that's what I'm going to be looking at very closely. A fair way to do that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Bob.
Some experience that relates to that. I know Board of Game hearings, we did exactly that, Tim, and it worked very well, where every day we published a list of those that signed to testify. You were given 3 calls. After 3 calls, you went off the list. And I almost hate to say it, we had very, very few problems with complaints of not being heard. People had a fair opportunity.
I mean, there has to be, unfortunately, government can't account for everybody's thing, because they might be on vacation, and that's kind of the luck of the draw. To the extent that we can accommodate them either through email or text or some other source to get their testimony in so it officially goes on the record, we should make every attempt to do that. But, I have definitely witnessed it over the years where a group or groups will organize to the extent that they call a new group of people and more forces. And if there's not some line, then there's no responsibility on the part of those that are supposed to testify either. So this has to be a sharing responsibility of government and the private party citizen that needs to be responsible to make sure they get their testimony there, or make a choice. Go to the theater that night or that and bet on the chance that I'm going to get to be able to be on the next list. Make your choice. Pick the theater, pick going to the hearing, make your choice.
Joelle?
I'm willing to hear, I mean, we're here to have a discussion about all the potential solutions, but there also has to be, you can't exempt them from the natural consequences of their actions. So you can't create a system that gives them an escape hatch for having done something that virtually everyone disagrees with. So that's my concern is that if you create a mechanism that it makes them escape the back end, they only have to survive so long and then they get the escape hatch, that is not reaping the consequences of your actions. And that is also part of government. So we have to weigh both those balances. When you give them an arbitrary and completely arbitrary escape hatch date, then they can just wait you out. And so there's a balance there. And you know, if you have 3,000 people who work for this city, and you really only feel like you have time to listen to 500 of them, and you're doing something that affects their everyday life, I got a problem with that, because you know, they all have a right to be heard. And there's 3,000 of them, and you're going to arbitrarily decide only 500 of them are worth hearing from.
Well, I agree, but if there's a hearing, we need to have some way, just like we don't know how many people are going to show up at our meetings with the public. And that's why, you know, we might get 10, we might get 500. And we need to think ahead and accommodate that and have a backup plan so if that many people do show up, that we've all worked it into our schedules that we can meet day after day after day to make sure that all the people get heard. But, you know, the games get played on both sides. And I think that's important for everybody to recognize. It happens more often than not, that one side will feel one way, one side, and whether it's the assembly waiting out to get this escape hatch, or the public or an interest group trying to get so many people there that they keep the thing going because they want to have people after people after people. That there needs to be some point at which, and you know, if there were 6,000 employees that wanted to speak, then the assembly should have set up a program by which they could have done that, and taken people's interest in testifying, or are they willing to, you know, testify in writing or whatever, be able to be on a list of some kind in all those different venues, and get on with life. And then the assembly has a responsibility to figure out how to hear all that testimony. And if they have to meet day after day at special meetings through the day, they've done that before too.
Arliss, Dick, and Joe.
You know, we've been a local government for a long time, and I'm sure there have been issues that no one from this body has attended the meeting where they were discussed. I wonder if, have you, Jane, or Madam Chair, in your discussions, have you had an opportunity to kind of make a list of issues that have arisen? In other words, what's our problem? And I think that's an important thing to know about. I certainly think it's important that a bottom line is the certainty of an opportunity to be heard. I can remember well the meeting when many people from Mat-Su were invited, when there were many people from Anchorage to be heard, and I thought that was rather, you know, a difficult time. So it's important there be that certainty of opportunity, but at a reasonable response time. Those are just some general thoughts.
Thank you. We have Dick and we have
Madam Chair, Arliss is going where I'm going. The charter guarantees the citizens of Anchorage right to testify, but does not guarantee the right of the Mat-Su residents to testify. So one thing I want you to look at is, with 37, that was just local residents. But 64 is another issue. We had buses coming in for a revival here at the Assembly Chambers. Could the Assembly have cut them off by requesting, show me where you live? If you're not in Anchorage, you don't testify. Because the charter deals with the citizens of Anchorage, gives them that right, but it does not go beyond our borders. So that's one thing we need you to look at.
Okay.
Had I been chairman, I would have simply said, go somewhere else because you can't testify. My concern is I want every Anchorage citizen the right to testify, and I want that to be maintained by the Assembly.
Sure. Thank you. Carolyn and Bob?
Oh, no, I was just,
Bob.
And sometimes in these
Andy?
processes, they can be handled with some sort of dignity by saying, we have this piece of testimony, position A on proposition whatever, or resolution. Are a group of you all testifying the same or similar? And I know I've used that, and people feel, and then you just say, 137 people would have testified in this way on this particular issue, and then you don't have these times where you're tying up everybody's time for extensive amounts of time. So maybe there's some tools and techniques we can offer based on our collective experience that would be helpful. Or as Dick says, making sure the right people that should be testified on.
Well, who gets to decide who's right? I don't know.
I
I'm
think
being
I do.
facetious.
No,
Okay. Andy? And Cheryl?
Thank you. Yeah, the ability to turn out people to filibuster the assembly that don't really care about an issue, I'm not sure that actually exists. And I'm sure for some people looking at the role the unions played in the AO 37 discussion might feel that's what happened. The reality is, if I want to try to get 100 people to meet me on the park strip tomorrow afternoon, and I can't give them a reason that compels them, I can probably get my wife to come. You know, in our case, we can't turn out people for something they don't care about. And the opposite thing I saw was I had members that on more than one night were in the assembly chambers for 2, 3, 4 hours, never got to speak. So I understand what you're saying. We don't want someone to come in and sabotage the process and prevent the assembly from acting. Although I'll say also in this case, if the assembly had taken a similar course of action on AO 37, created a task force, legitimate work groups that took suggestions in the crafting of the law, and then it came forward, still don't doubt you'd have people that showed up to speak to it. I don't think you'd have 1,000. I don't think you would have overflowed the parking lot, overflowed the buildings, overflowed the
To
night.
respond to that, I absolutely agree, and I would never endorse the way that the whole thing started and came down. So the whole thing could have been handled a lot better. We probably wouldn't be sitting here now as a task force. But I do think that there's a reasonable consideration that people can get on a list by a certain time. And then it is also inconvenient, big time, to be there for 2 or 3 or 4 nights waiting to be heard. And the list is actually a convenient way to do it, because if you can look at the list, see where you are, you have some idea of what night you need to be there, or when, or what hours, and it really does help, because I can tell you, over my lifespan, I've spent way too much time in the assembly chambers for whatever assembly, board, or commission, and you're just, to do your job right, you're there for the duration, and it really would be convenient to know basically within this time period when you're going to be there, and to have people have to stand up in the aisle waiting to get heard, that's a little bit unreasonable as well. So I agree with you in a lot of ways, in most ways, but I do think that we need to be able to say from this period to this period, this is your opportunity to get yourself on a list or get your input in. And then it's up to the assembly to say, okay, they qualified within this time frame, and they get to speak. And whatever we have to do to make sure that we can accommodate all the people that signed up by that time to speak, we got to do it. Yeah, if they meet from 8 in the morning till midnight at night, that's the way it is. That's the job they took on.
Mr. Trainee?
one short thing, and I'll get out of your way. We created this problem. The Assembly created this problem. The charter that you wrote for a great document says the Assembly must meet at a minimum twice a month. Take a look at our agenda this last year. That's what we've been doing. We've been meeting the minimum twice a month. What would have stopped the Assembly from meeting 5 days a week or 4 times a month? We created this problem. We own the problem. And now we've given it to you guys to figure a way to get us out of the problem. So please take a look at how often we were meeting after this was introduced. That's part of the problem that created this backlog of people. There's no reason the Sunday couldn't have met on Saturdays from 9 in the morning to 9 at night. There's no reason the Sunday could not have increased the amount of times they met. We created the problem, now we give it to you guys to figure out a way to deal with the issue. When the charter is clear on how you deal with the issue, you simply meet more times during the month. So anyway, I'll leave it alone, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah,
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
well, that's, we're beginning to go around, but I'm gonna go ahead and enter the loop anyway. I would say that quantity of people turning out to a public hearing is also a form of feedback. It's not necessarily a wasteful filibustering. It is a form of feedback that people are seriously upset. And so I think that is very important. And whether it's a list or not, or standing in a line before the microphone, we need to treat everyone the same. I think Ms. Anvik made that point in her public testimony on AO 64. And I thought that was very good advice. And I too agree with Arliss that 64 was a solution in search of a problem. That the obligation is to hear the people, and what was the problem? That Mr. Trainee thinks it's because they didn't meet often enough. God knows there may have been other problems as well. But I would just offer that. And then again to my own agenda here, I have available a draft municipal public participation ordinance from the Deliberative Democracy Consortium. And it's just got the language in it and some standards that we can look at as we continue this discussion.
Sure, can you give Amanda a copy of that? She can then get it to each of us. Oh, you've already got it?
Yes.
Sure. Wonderful. And I just want to make sure that they're available electronically as well, because some people...
The website is listed on the paper copy.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes? Mr. Barnett?
One last process-oriented point is hearing Assemblyman Steele introduce himself reminded me of his exceptional service to the Anchorage School Board, and I think the deliberations of this effort would probably involve the public hearing process that the school board undertakes as well. And that's my assumption. And if so, I wonder if we should be inviting someone to this committee, and maybe that's for the Rules Committee to decide whether somebody from the school district should be involved.
Just for your information, I have communicated with the superintendent and with the president of the school board to make sure that we understand what their rules are and what they do, and they're assembling that for us as part of our background information.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just to throw in, starting last year, the district has changed how it does public hearings. I'd offer up, I don't think it's a model for anybody to follow.
Okay.
It's not what it used to be.
Really?
And then, Carolyn?
I just want to clarify one thing with Cheryl. The public testimony mess was 63.
Oh.
64 was the summer with Debbie Osiander and the extended testimony. So I just wanted to make a clarification of that.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
I just want to add one comment of my own, which is, number one, I think every citizen has to be treated exactly the same, regardless of the topic of the agenda of the ordinance. That respect is the watchword of how we interact with one another, and that's really important. Number two, I think that we have an opportunity to talk about the public record, meaning the electronic communication that goes to assembly people and that is not shared then with the rest of the public. And that I think we should create a place where everyone is able to know what everyone else has said on the topic. So if there's an email site that says, I would like to comment on this ordinance, then it's available to everyone to be able to see what everybody else has has articulated, so the electronic public record is as open as the verbal public record before an assembly member. And then the third thing I wanted to say is, I believe that the assembly does not have the legal authority to close a public hearing. Even a supermajority does not have the legal authority to close a public hearing. That's my position. I'm not a lawyer. But I think it's a violation of the charter, and that I think one of our obligations in this committee is to articulate to the assembly that they can't do that. And which is the flip side of, they have to accommodate everybody who wants to communicate, but they cannot say, we're done. They can't do that. 11 of them can't do that. So I just want to say respectfully, it is illegal, and therefore a violation of the charter. They can always figure out a different way. That's my personal opinion. Therefore, but they could figure out a process for managing people. They can create a time limitation. They can create a sign-up sheet. They can do all kinds of things to manage the public. They can't just say, no, we're not listening to you. We're done. Can't do that. That's my personal agenda item, which is out there now. So I just want to say that, and I'm sure that a way to say that in a more graceful manner than you can't do that would be probably better received than the way I just said it. But I believe it is, we have an opportunity to, and I don't think, by the way, I don't think that the people who voted to close that hearing knew that. I don't think they knew that. So I'll just assume cupidity ends, and I will assume they do know that because they were getting other information about that they could do.
Madam Chair, I'm having a little problem with that. You open a public hearing. At some point, you have to close it before you take action. What are you saying?
They closed the public hearing when there were 200 people who wanted to testify.
Yeah, but you say never.
I don't think they can close the public hearing. Is there anybody else who wants to testify? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Oh, okay.
What they did was close the public hearing while there were people standing there who wanted to testify. And that is a violation of the charter.
Okay, well that, you didn't quite state it. All right.
All right.
That caveat was missing from your initial
I'm
discussion.
so sorry I didn't explain it.
And
That-
I think we all kind of got what you meant, but that's true. If
When
there's
there
still
are
someone
people who
standing
still,
there.
when there are people who still want to testify, I don't believe the authority, I don't believe the assembly has the authority to close the public hearing.
Jane, in 6 years as chairman, I never shut down testimony when there was anybody to testify. The last comment is there anybody else who wishes to testify on the issue? Then you close the testimony. You never close testimony when there's even one person that wants to testify, because you violate the charter when you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll shut
We're
up.
on the same page.
Or to make it more clear, the assembly doesn't close testimony by inaction. And that's what happened in AO 37. They voted to close testimony.
7
And if I hear
people
you
voted,
correct,
and I think they didn't know that they can't do that.
that's just not a procedure
Jane, I
that should be
disagree. They
considered.
knew they could, they did it anyway.
Well, I wasn't there.
Okay, all I can say is that however it came to pass, it is not
I will speculate they may have gotten some
bad information.
not totally appropriate legal advice also.
I think that seems endemic. So I have a question. I think we're going to close now. I know that our task before us is about the management of public testimony. Part and parcel to how we end up in these situations is a lack of public participation in the creation of the concepts, right? How we end up needing all this public testimony. I know if you watched AO 37, a lot of this was highly technical, information about how this would affect a specific work group that was clearly not thought of when the draft was created. Because our process in the municipal government doesn't, unless you seek out, unless you are purposely seeking that kind of information, there's no way to access government in the creation phase of an ordinance of any kind. It plops out on the stage. There it is. You're going to discuss it, but you can't. The public can only comment on what's there. They don't get to have. There's not like a phase where you can craft as you go along. So I think that there's, and that is, maybe that's fine for relatively simple things, but complicated things, and I'll just say it straight out, especially when you're attempting not to include the public, which was so clearly the case in 37. This was an attempt to subvert any public input, stuff it down in 2 weeks and get it out. They didn't want this kind of input. That's its own problem. But this idea that that there's no way for the public to engage with the document before it's on the table, it's part of the problem in this municipality. It's a charter, it's a longer question, and maybe it's not the purview of this, but I have to say that as I watch the way ordinances roll out, they kind of roll out in full form, you're allowed to comment on them, but you don't get to comment again on the S version, and there's no work session that the public gets to engage with an elected. It's all in these like one-off conversations, and they can only meet 2 or 3 at a time. It's a little odd to create law this way when it affects so many people, when there's not really a dialogue with the electorate about how is this law going to impact their lives. And so I think we can certainly do everything we can to mitigate the back end of that process, but if the front part of the process is not right, the back end is always going to be a disaster.
In
Really
response to
interesting
that, I
comment,
think
and that goes back to Cheryl's comment about how does a citizen participate in the government process?
And I think that's very true, and I don't think that this committee should go that far, because that's a whole other issue, and right, wrong, and indifference. Our system, not just in Anchorage, but in the United States, has operated the way of the laws come forward, they get debated, there's public input, and that's the way it is. And you said something very important, the electorate. The electorate always has the final say, because they can boot the guy out. It might not be tomorrow, but at some point they can. And they can always have an action to recall. So if it's that egregious, then you go after it, the electorate does. And I think we have the government and we have checks and balances, and what you'd hope to do would be to elect smart, straightforward, open, and honest people that understand the value of doing things openly. And I think maybe we haven't done a good job of that a couple of times.
I also think I just want to comment that there is another on the list of do we have a problem is the question of how a person comments on an amended version, another amended version, a substitute version, when they've commented once. And do we need to be able to create a pathway to comment on amended versions of ordinances? And clearly, that was a factor in several ordinances, but the one that really comes to mind for me is the Title 21 revisions. Whatever they were voting on by the time they were voting on it, I have no idea what was before them, let alone what version had come out. And so the methodology whereby it's just a new problem to add to our list of things is how do you add a comment to a proposal that is significantly different than the one you commented on?
Well, I've certainly been at meetings, and so have you, Jane, where there have been the primary ordinance, then there's an S1, possibly an S2, sometimes even an S3 version, and you're asked to come down and testify. And you haven't even seen S1, S2, S3, and the poor clerk's office is trying to make a copy there on the spot, but they just got handed S3. And there needs to be a system where that goes back into a feedback loop. Exactly. And gives everybody a chance to read it before it's acted on, so that their public testimony makes some sense on what's really being looked at.
Part of my point in bringing that all up is that I understand that this task force doesn't have an agenda. I do actually think we need to change the way we do business in the municipality of Anchorage, because there are people who do better in involvements, processes. But when you start talking about the public input in the process that we have, it's imperative to remember this is the only way, oftentimes, the people directly affected by this have had any input at all. So controlling and limiting the input that those people have at the back end when it's their only opportunity, it's very problematic. And hence is also, the list has a problem. The list concept is problematic from a couple different ways, but it is really important to remember that there's no real way to have your opinion heard in the formation of any ordinance. And so you are left to comment on the product, and if you've been purposefully excluded from the creation of that, you know, we have to bear in mind that that happens because it just did happen. It may not happen every time, but it certainly just did happen, and we need to remember that. We also have to be prepared for the worst case scenario because we've seen it happen, right? Multiple times in this town. Yeah.
We're going to have Bob and then Dick.
I'm sort of listening to the scope. Would you find a vice chair helpful in
Yes.
some of this?
Would you like to be the vice chair?
Don't threaten me, lady. No. I would be happy, but there's a lot of other people in the room.
So moved.
He's the vice chair, that's a motion. That's a motion.
Need a second?
Jane told me earlier never to use the
It's
restroom
been-
when the vote's being taken.
It's been moved and seconded that Bob Churchill serve as the vice chair. Is there any discussion?
Who was the mover and the second?
The mover was Tim Potter and the second was Joelle Hall. Bob, would you like to be the vice chair?
Yes.
Terrific.
I'll be happy to.
Is there any objection to Bob being the vice chair? Hearing and seeing no one, a team.
Hey.
And one
It's a
of
large
my
team.
goals, by the way, for us is that we'll get the three actions we took, but actually what I'm going to do is try and summarize some of the concepts that came out, just as what you started out with, Arla, says, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What are the issues that we need to be looking at when we are coming together? Dick Trady.
The S2 version of 37 was delivered to the Assembly and approved by my colleagues without my vote. I was a negative vote on it. It happened the night that it passed. That was the first time the Assembly saw the S2 version. The public never got it. It was there available, but you never saw it was actually passed by the
So
Assembly.
there's some.
And that is a problem when the S2 version shows up and it's approved that night by the body.
So actually, at great trepidation, we might even have some suggestions for Assembly consideration of their own processes within their own consideration of ordinances as well.
And we're gonna have a good time as the Rules Committee talking about issues.
Okay, terrific. I am very respectful of our time. And so I would like to close this meeting today and thank you very generously for your time. Tim Potter.
Just one more question. There was a reference to a lot of good testimony about what the issues and problems and concerns were at the hearing. And not on AO 37, but on 63, 64. And do we have a transcript for that?
It's not, it has not been transcribed, but I can send everyone the link to watching the video.
Okay, that'd be great.
All the minutes we produce.
We produce action minutes, so we don't.
So there was a lengthy public hearing on there was an ordinance that was proposed for what the process of public hearings would be, and that was ordinance number 63. So what the clerk just said, what Amanda just said, is there is actually, we can look at the public testimony and take our own notes of what people suggested because there's not a transcript of it. And if people would like to see that, she can send us the link. People like that to happen.
You know, and I might still be able to dredge up my personal note.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. You may be getting lots of emails from us that say, take a look at this, take a look at this. When we meet on July 25th, I will have given you an identification of the kinds of topics that we will be talking about that day, but it's an opportunity for us to actually talk about ideas and concepts when we are coming together. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.